When most Americans hear the word Rastafari, a very specific set of images and sounds probably floods their minds. The iconic face of Bob Marley, dreadlocks flowing, singing soulful anthems of peace, love, and rebellion. The distinctive rhythms of reggae music, the red, gold, and green colors of the Ethiopian flag. And, almost inevitably, the ritual use of ganja, or marijuana. For many, Rastafari seems less like a formal religion and more like a laid-back, countercultural lifestyle associated with Jamaica, good vibes, and smoking weed. It's often viewed through a haze of stereotypes, sometimes romanticized, sometimes ridiculed. But what if I told you that behind the music and the smoke lies a complex, deeply serious, and profoundly theological religious movement? To explore the surprising origins, the core beliefs, and the radical theology of one of the world's most misunderstood and misrepresented modern religious movements, this is the real story of Rastafari. To understand Rastafari, we cannot start with Bob Marley in the 1970s. We must go back much further, to the crushing poverty, systemic racism, and simmering spiritual yearning of colonial Jamaica in the early 20th century. For the vast majority of Black Jamaicans, descendants of enslaved Africans, life was defined by oppression. They were politically disenfranchised, economically exploited by a white colonial elite, and culturally alienated from their African heritage by centuries of forced assimilation and Christian missionary activity. The established churches often seemed to reinforce the colonial power structure, offering solace in the afterlife but little hope for justice or dignity in this life. Into this environment stepped one of the most influential Black nationalist figures of the 20th century, Marcus Garvey. Garvey, a Jamaican-born activist, founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association UNIA in the 1910s. His message was one of Black pride, self-reliance, economic empowerment, and, crucially, a return to Africa, both physically and spiritually. Garvey wasn't necessarily starting a religion, but his powerful rhetoric was steeped in biblical language and prophecy, reinterpreted through a Black liberation lens. He urged his followers to see God through their own eyes, to cast off the image of a white Jesus imposed by their oppressors. And he made a specific, electrifying prediction, often quoted by early Rastas, though the exact wording is debated: "Look to Africa when a Black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is near." Garvey was eventually deported from the U.S. and his movement faced challenges, but his ideas planted a powerful seed in the minds of poor, disenfranchised Jamaicans. They were now waiting for a sign from Africa. And in 1930, that sign seemed to arrive with stunning, world-changing clarity. On November 2, 1930, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, a nobleman named Rastafari Makanan was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia. Ethiopia held immense symbolic significance. It was the only African nation never fully colonized by Europeans, a beacon of Black independence and ancient Christian heritage, tracing its lineage back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Rastafari took the imperial throne name Haile Selassie, which means power of the Trinity. He also claimed the titles King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. For a handful of street preachers and Bible study groups back in the slums of Kingston, Jamaica men like Leonard Howell, Joseph Hibbert, and Archibald Dunkley, who had been steeped in Garvey's prophecy and were meticulously searching the scriptures. This event was not just a geopolitical coronation. It was the literal fulfillment of biblical prophecy. They looked at the titles, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. This was a title applied directly to Jesus Christ in the book of Revelation 19:16. They looked at conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. This was another messianic title from Revelation 5:5. They saw a Black king, crowned in Africa, fulfilling Garvey's prediction. They put the pieces together and came to an astonishing conclusion. Haile Selassie I, the Emperor of Ethiopia, was God himself, Jah incarnate. He was the returned Messiah, the second coming of Christ, not in the clouds, but on an earthly throne, fulfilling the promises made to King David. This became the absolute foundational belief of the nascent Rastafari movement. The very name Rastafari comes directly from Haile Selassie's pre-coronation name, Ras meaning head or Prince Tafari. To be a Rasta was to recognize the divinity of this living African king. This claim was, of course, radical and considered blasphemous by mainstream Christians in Jamaica and around the world. Haile Selassie himself was a devout Ethiopian Orthodox Christian and never claimed divinity, though his complex responses when asked about it by Rastas fueled further interpretation. But for the early Rastas, the evidence from prophecy, the symbolism of Ethiopia, and the deep yearning for a black god and king who represented their liberation were overwhelming. Jah Rastafari, God revealed in the person of Rastafari, was their living hope. From this core belief in the divinity of Haile Selassie, a whole theological worldview and way of life, known as Livity, began to develop among the early Rasta communities in Jamaica, often through communal Bible study and reasoning sessions called groundations. 1. Jah, the name for God, derived from Jehovah, found in the King James Bible, Psalm 68:4. Rastas believe Jah is both a transcendent spirit and immanent within all creation, and especially within human beings. The divinity of Haile Selassie was the ultimate manifestation of Jah in human form. 2. Babylon. This is the Rasta term for the oppressive, materialistic, and unjust structures of the Western world, encompassing political systems, economic exploitation, police brutality, religious hypocrisy, especially established churches seen as complicit with colonialism, and a decadent, unnatural lifestyle. Babylon is everything that opposes Jah and enslaves the spirit. Rastas see themselves as living in exile within Babylon, yearning for liberation. 3. Zion. In contrast to Babylon, Zion represents the promised land, the homeland, the place of freedom, righteousness, and divine connection. While holding biblical resonance, Zion is primarily identified with Africa, and specifically Ethiopia. Repatriation to Africa, whether physical or spiritual, became a central goal for many early Rastas. 4. I and I. This distinctive Rasta linguistic term replaces pronouns like you and me or we. It reflects a core theological belief in the oneness of all people and the divine spark, Jah, residing within each individual. I and I emphasizes unity and the connection between the self and God. It's a rejection of the separation implied by you versus me. 5. Reasoning granation. Rastafari has no single, centralized authority or written doctrine beyond the Bible, interpreted through their unique lens. Theology and community understanding develop through communal sessions of discussion, debate, Bible study, chanting, and often the ritual smoking of ganja, known as reasoning or groundations. This is where scripture is interpreted, social issues are analyzed, and collective wisdom emerges. 6. Idolivity. Derived from the word vital, idol refers to a way of living, particularly eating, that is natural, pure, and life-giving, avoiding processed foods, chemicals, salt, and often all meat. Many, but not all, Rastas are vegetarian or vegan. Eating idol is seen as maintaining the body as a pure temple for the indwelling spirit of Jah, rejecting the corrupting influences of Babylon's processed, unnatural diet. These concepts formed a comprehensive worldview, a theology of liberation that radically reinterpreted the Bible through the lens of Black experience and the divinity of Haile Selassie, offering a powerful alternative to the dominant colonial culture. Beyond the core theology, Rastafari developed distinctive practices and symbols that became visible markers of their identity and beliefs. Dreadlocks. Perhaps the most famous Rasta symbol, dreadlocks are worn in obedience to the Nazarite vow described in the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 6. This vow, taken by figures like Samson, required participants not to cut their hair, among other things. As a sign of separation and dedication to God, Rastas let their hair lock naturally dread as a symbol of their covenant with Jah. Their roots in Africa, their defiance of Babylon's grooming standards which often mimicked white European styles, and sometimes as representing the mane of the Lion of Judah Haile Selassie. Ganja marijuana. The ritual use of ganja is one of the most controversial aspects. For Rastas, ganja is not primarily a recreational drug. It is a sacrament, a holy herb, sometimes referred to as the wisdom weed or holy herb, sanctioned by biblical passages like Genesis 1:29, "Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, single quotes, Psalm 100:4-14, and Revelation 20:2, "To the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations." It is typically smoked in a communal setting during reasoning sessions or prayer, using pipes called chalices. Rastas believe ganja helps to quiet the mind, open the spirit to divine inspiration, facilitate peaceful meditation, and allow for deeper connection with joy and with each other. Its use is sacred, ritualized, and intended for spiritual purposes, distinct from purely recreational use. Colors: the colors red, gold or yellow, and green, prominent on the Ethiopian flag, were adopted by Rastas as sacred colors representing red, the blood of martyrs shed for black liberation; gold, the wealth of Africa, the homeland; green, the lushness and fertility of Ethiopia, Zion. Sometimes black is added, representing the people of Africa. These outward symbols, the hair, the herb, the colors, became powerful visual statements of Rasta identity, often leading to persecution by the Jamaican authorities' Babylon system, who saw the movement as subversive and dangerous. For its first few decades, Rastafari remained a relatively small, marginalized, and often persecuted movement within Jamaica. Its global explosion onto the world stage happened largely through the power of music, specifically reggae. Starting in the late 1960s and exploding in the 1970s, musicians like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer the Wailers, along with many others, began infusing their music with Rasta beliefs, language, and symbolism. Reggae became the soundtrack of the movement, carrying its message of resistance against Babylon, yearning for Zion, social justice, and faith in Jah Rastafari to a massive international audience. Bob Marley, in particular, became a global superstar and the international face of Rastafari. His lyrics, filled with biblical allusions, calls for liberation, and praises of Jah introduced millions around the world to Rasta concepts. Songs like Exodus, Redemption Song, Get Up, Stand Up, and We're Using lines from a Haile Selassie speech became anthems for oppressed people everywhere. This global exposure through reggae was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it gave the movement unprecedented visibility and attracted converts from diverse backgrounds around the world. On the other hand, it often led to a simplification, commodification, and sometimes misrepresentation of Rasta beliefs. For many fans, Rasta became synonymous simply with reggae music, dreadlocks, and smoking weed, detached from the deep theological commitments, the specific belief in Haile Selassie's divinity, and the rigorous liberty practiced by devout adherents. The image often overshadowed the substance. It's also crucial to understand that Rastafari is not a monolithic movement. There is significant diversity within it, often categorized into different mansions or houses, with varying interpretations and practices. The main ones include Nyabingi Order, considered the oldest mansion, emphasizing drumming, chanting, and African roots. Bobo Shanti, a more monastic group known for turbans, strict Sabbath observance, and a belief in Prince Emmanuel Charles Edwards as part of a trinity alongside Haile Selassie and Marcus Garvey. 12 Tribes of Israel, founded by Vernon Carrington Prophet Gad. This group is often seen as more liberal, sometimes reading the Bible a chapter a day and accepting Jesus Christ alongside Haile Selassie. Bob Marley was associated with this mansion. Furthermore, the death of Haile Selassie in 1975 presented a significant theological challenge. How could God die? Responses varied. Some Rastas concluded Selassie wasn't God incarnate after all, but a divine representative or prophet. Others argued that his physical death was irrelevant. His spirit, Jah, lives on within the faithful and I. Still others believe he did not truly die, but was withdrawn by Jah, awaiting a future reappearance. This event forced a re-evaluation and diversification of beliefs about Selassie's precise nature. Today, Rastafari continues to evolve, both in Jamaica and globally. It remains a powerful voice for Black consciousness, social justice, and alternative spirituality, grappling with modernity while striving to maintain its core principles. So, the story of Rastafari is far richer and more theologically complex than the popular stereotypes suggest. It is a modern religious movement born out of specific historical conditions of oppression, fueled by prophetic interpretation, centered on the audacious claim of a living, divine king, and expressing itself through a unique culture and powerful music. And this brings us to the final debate: how should we understand Rastafari? Is it a legitimate religious interpretation? A valid, albeit unconventional, expression of Abrahamic faith, offering profound theological insights into Black identity, liberation from oppression Babylon, and the immanence of God Jah and I. Should its unique interpretation of Scripture and its deification of Haile Selassie be respected as a genuine path to the divine for its followers? Or is it primarily a culturally specific, syncretic movement, deeply rooted in the Jamaican experience, based on a misinterpretation of biblical prophecy and a controversial deification of a 20th century political figure? Is its global appeal more about the charisma of Bob Marley, the allure of reggae music, and the countercultural symbolism, rather than its core theological claims? Can a religion founded on the divinity of a man who lived, died, and never claimed godhood be considered historically or theologically sound? Where do you place Rastafari on the spectrum of world religions? Is it a faith, a culture, a political statement, or a unique blend of all three? Let me know your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the real theology behind Rastafari fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the rich diversity of religious beliefs and practices around the world. Thanks for watching. Walk good.